All right, there are 8 common mistakes that I have found in working with students that make them less attractive candidates. So I want to talk to you about that so that you can make sure that you're not making any of these mistakes. The first mistake I see is sometimes students lack rigor. That means they did not take challenging classes. You want to make sure that you're taking honors classes early in high school and that you're moving up to AP classes. If you're, as I said before, if you're in an IB class or an ACE program, IB or ACE program, you are fine. You have challenge, and that will not be a consideration. But a student with a 4.0 average and no honors courses is a weak applicant at most colleges, unless their high school offers no honors or AP courses. An easy senior year is also a damaging thing. I consider this part of the lacking rigor. If you aren't taking challenging courses your senior year, you're doing damage to your attractiveness as an applicant. The next thing is failing to prepare for the tests. This is such an important issue. You must make sure you prepare for the tests. So take a look at the Max the Test website. Make sure that you are in good shape when it comes to the tests. Not getting involved in some extracurricular activity. I've had some students who you say, okay, show me your resume, what have you been involved in? And there's not anything under extracurricular activities. That's a weakness for sure. That's a mistake they've made. And you can't fix that easily when you're a senior. It just won't work. Another common thing that I find is procrastinating. So I have sometimes seniors who are waiting and waiting to get around to applying or to even figure out where they might want to apply. Procrastination is fear getting in the way of action. Don't let that happen to you. Set that fear aside and start taking action. Start investigating. So that brings me to the next ones, not exploring options. Sometimes I have students who say, I just want to go to this university. You say, why? Well, because my brother is there. Well, that's wonderful, and it may be a great place for your brother, but is it a great place for you? You have to figure that out. So explore your options. See what is a good fit for you. Make sure to visit a small college and a large university so that you have that as an indication of what's important. Not asking questions is another mistake students make. You may make assumptions, you may just assume that you know what the best place is for you. Ask, what do you offer? Why is this available? Why isn't that available? Ask questions. When it comes to the application, not following directions is one of the mistakes that students make. So if it says it's a 500-word essay, don't submit a 600-word essay. Now, electronically, sometimes it's just going to stop you and not even allow you to submit. So you're going to have to go back and edit that essay to fit the parameters they have set. And lastly, sometimes my students end up wanting to apply to name schools, prestige schools, and they do that to the exclusion of finding likely schools. I had a student we'll call Jane, who was applying to Princeton and Johns Hopkins and Duke and Emory. And I looked at her scores and I said, those are all great scores. Why are you applying to these schools, though? They're hard to get into. And she said, they're schools my dad wants me to apply to. And I said, well, that's great, but you need to tell Dad you need some likely schools. So you need to look at where your scores are and find some likely schools. She had good scores. She was highly ranked in her class, but she wasn't quite as high as the scores that Dad had in mind. So she talked to Dad, and he was open to the idea, and she applied to some additional schools. When all of the answers came in the spring, she hadn't gotten into any of Dad's schools. If Dad hadn't listened, she wouldn't have had a college to go to in the fall. But Dad had listened, and she got into the University of Miami with a big financial aid offer, so Dad was happy, she was happy, and she's having a great experience there. So find likely schools for you to get into and make sure you like them. because if they're the only schools you get into, you could be going there. You want to make sure you would be happy there. So pick happy, likely schools. I encourage you to avoid all of these mistakes, learn from others so that you don't make those mistakes.